And welcome in to Husker Rewind. Tom Stevens here, Mike Melby there. We're on the stream. Can you hear the babbling brook in the background? Well, you probably can.
Well, to say normally when people say babbling, they're talking about me and just
That's
incoherently.
Right. Us basically together is what this show is. Husker Rewind every Sunday from 5 until 7 with Mike Melby and Tom Stevens. We are on the stream because LSU is playing Florida. There will be a game 3, by the way, at the College World Series as Florida leads 15-3. I mean, I guess LSU could have the greatest comeback in College World Series history. I'm just guessing that would be the greatest comeback in College World Series history since it's in the 8th and Florida is up 15-3.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was one that it was interesting. Tom Chattel wrote a fantastic article this morning in the World Herald about this has the makings of one of the all-time greats challenging for the best College World Series ever, but it needs an ending. Now, a winner-take-all ending, game 3 seemed like a must, so Florida almost needed to win today, but we kind of need some kind of you almost want a little suspense in this thing.
Yeah, a little bit, but there will be a game 3, and that provides a lot of suspense in itself. Yeah. I think a lot of
Lincoln Sports Talk. So good for you. 93.7 The Ticket.
Is that on the stream? That probably goes on the stream. Did you hear that?
I did.
It was in my ear. It was in your ear. But I'll just pop these down so they don't go over.
There we go.
The stream in the future. It'll just be our voices. What I was trying to say is I think a lot of Husker fans that are attending the College World Series are probably rooting for LSU. That's kind of the way it is. Nebraska fans tend to be big LSU fans. Did you see the story earlier this week about the former Raising Cane's owner buying over 2,000 Jello shots? Was it more than that? 5,000, whatever it was.
6,000.
Was it 6,000?
6,000 put them over the record from last year.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I know him. He's a good guy. When him and his wife moved to Lincoln, they became sponsors of the hockey team here in town. And
they've since sold it, right? They've sold it. And I think they've moved back to Louisiana since they sold it. But they were the original owners of Raising Cane's in Lincoln.
Yeah, here in Lincoln. But the funny thing was, though, just the type of people they are, this was not a surprise when I saw the story pop up, because the very first winter that they were in Lincoln, the one thing that they noticed just around town is that they just noticed a lot of younger kids. Now, maybe it's just bad parenting, but they noticed a lot of younger kids that weren't wearing coats, and it was really cold outside. And so they decided, hey, we want to make ourselves a part of this community. And they started a massive coat drive. It wasn't massive.
I remember that.
They had like 38 coats donated. The last year they did it, they had like 3,800 coats. And it just turned into, but that's the type of people they are. All they want to do is give back, and they truly have.
They gave back in the form of Jello shots at this time.
They did, but all that money, obviously, or a big chunk of that money going to charity.
Right,
and,
a big chunk of it.
So it's fantastic. Not surprised by it. But, yeah, I think you're right. If you're a Nebraska fan, as a matter of fact, let's do the starting gate, because I will, expound on what you just said about Nebraska fans and LSU baseball.
All right. I have also got a LSU story to tell since we're telling LSU stories. But let's get to the starting gate. Mike tries to recap everything that happened in Husker sports this week during the starting gate.
All righty. College World Series. What do Nebraska baseball fans want to have happen at the CWS almost as much as the Huskers making it there and being in the mix for a natty? Well, they want LSU and their insanely awesome fan base making it to Omaha and being in the mix for a natty. Guess what?
They're in the mix.
They're in the mix. Last night, Ty Floyd struck out 17, career-high 17 at Charles Schwab Field up in Omaha as LSU wins in extra innings for the second straight game. They're one win from a national title, and after today's game, there's still going to be one win from a national title that will take place tomorrow night. Tommy Tanks again delivered for the Tigers last night. He was the hero in the game against Wake Forest in the 11th. This time in the 8th, he had a solo shot that tied it at 3, and then in the 11th inning, Cesar Beloso hit a solo shot to give the Tigers the lead. They went on to win, but now today, just a lot of what we saw from Nebraska with timely hitting, like lack of this year, that was LSU today. They left 8 on base in the first 3 innings, and it doesn't look like it's gotten any better because they haven't scored since the second inning. But they're getting smoked right now. 15-3, 2 outs in the 8th. So it's still going to be fantastic, though. Husker football is on a little bit of a roll, and that roll may go off of a cliff in an Iron Man suit and be just perfectly fine and just take off to the stars.
Red hot.
But at the conclusion of this weekend's visits, which saw a load of talent get up close look at the football program, the coaching staff, the university, and the way this staff recruits the community. They want them seeing what Lincoln is like and being out in the community, which I think is fantastic. Right now, it looks and sounds like there could be up to 6 commitments. And we're going to talk to Brian Munson from Husker Online here in about 15 minutes. And we're going to see if anybody maybe has gone ahead and given the thumbs up to Nebraska. But right now, there's either crystal ball predictions or heavy leans by those that do follow recruiting and write about it. Carter Nelson, the tight end from Ainsworth, is a crystal ball or a heavy lean. Ernest Campbell.
That would be so huge. I mean, the one Georgia guy that you really wanted was, of course, not going to come to, at least for now, is not going to come to Nebraska, Dylan Raiola. But the other, Carter Nelson, could also choose Georgia.
He could.
But that would make up a lot when you consider they got Daniel Kalen. If they were to get Carter Nelson, and the other part of it is the big weekend they had with wide receiver recruiting, which we'll talk to a lot with Munson here coming up.
So on that leans or crystal balls, not only is it Carter Nelson, Ernest Campbell, who, by the way, just ran a 10-2-2 100
track guy. That's
wide
incredible.
Receiver. He's a heavy lean. Offensive lineman Grant Brixt, Quan Lacey, the one and only running back, possible commit. It's a heavy lean right now. Nebraska doesn't have a running back in the 24 class yet. Rex Guthrie, a defensive back, and Quinn Clark. Ken Clark was his dad. He's a wide receiver. They are all right now listed as heavy leans or crystal ball predictions to commit to Nebraska. They also, here in the last few days, picked up preferred walk-on commits from fullback Isaac Dickey. Luke Longval will be joining the program as a preferred walk-on quarterback. He was going to be competing for the starting job at Iowa Western Community College this fall. Instead, he is joining the Nebraska football program as a walk-on quarterback and is going to come in. Obviously, I don't think they plan on him playing a whole lot this year, but he's a guy that they felt the need to bring in for this upcoming season. And they also picked up a commit from Nico Ottomanelli, who is a kicker/punter.
Right.
Jamie Williams, last night, is an Iowa Central Community College defensive end. He committed as a preferred walk-on. So the football team with recruiting is going really, really well. We'll be interested to see how many more dominoes fall here in the next couple of days from the big recruiting weekend this weekend. Husker volleyball currently has 3 commits in the 2025 class. June 15th was the first time the coaches could make contact and say, hey, you want to come play for me? Well, number 1 setter in the country, Campbell Flynn, said, yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best liberos in the country from Lincoln Lutheran, right here in Lincoln, Nebraska, Carrie Leinbach, said, yeah, I do. And then outside hitter, Terea Sigler, said, Nebraska is my dream school. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And we will have a conversation with Nebraska assistant volleyball coach Jalen Reyes in the 6 o'clock hour. And I ask him a question. Are you done? You'll hear that answer at about 6:25.
And when we called him, by the way, what was he doing? He was recruiting. He was recruiting in Houston. I call him, and you're hearing all sorts of bouncing noise in what sounds like to be a gym. I said, are you out recruiting? He goes, yeah, I'm in Houston.
There you go.
Haven't you done your work? You've just compiled what is probably going to be the number 1 recruiting class again in the country. He said, no, got work to do.
Exactly. The baseball team evidently has been on a roll as well from a recruiting standpoint ever since Rod Childress took over as pitching coach and Mike Sirianni joined the staff from Wichita State. Speaking of Wichita State, Tyler Horn. I think Tyler Horn's the guy that's going to challenge him at Olson for that Friday night starter role next year. He was added as a transfer from Wichita State. Add to him first baseman Tyler Stone from Iowa Western Community College, pitchers Brooks Neifel and Aiden White, plus outfielder Clay Bradford, all have committed to Will Bolt and his staff this week. Some sad news to pass along, though, here in the starting gate. Former Nebraska running back Darren Diedrich passed away yesterday after fighting cancer for pretty much the last 9 years. The 44-year-old Played for former Husker head coach Frank Solich at Nebraska, finished his college career with 2,745 rushing yards and 26 touchdowns. He went on to win 4 Grey Cups during his NFL playing and coaching career, 3 as a player, 2 with Edmonton, one with Edmonton in 2005, 2 with Montreal in 2009 and 10. And then he was diagnosed in 2014 with
lymphoma. Yeah, don't try to pronounce it. You'll hurt himself.
Hepatosplenetic gamma delta T-cell lymphoma.
Yeah.
He retired, but then came back and coached. He was the strength coach for the Toronto Argonauts when they won the Grey Cup in 2017. But sad news, former Nebraska running back Darren Dietrich passes away from cancer.
Played in the 2002 Rose Bowl against Miami.
Yep.
Nebraska, of course, lost that game 37-14, but he was a beast. 6 feet, 225, really fast.
Yeah, and
he's from Canada, by the way.
He's actually the first ever Canadian-born scholarship recruit that Nebraska had in the history of Nebraska football. And then local note on Thursday, and I think it's kind of an important one, the Warhorse Casino opened their sports book. And for the first time in the history of the state of Nebraska, any person that is of age can walk up to a counter and say, I would like to bet on that game right there. And they can do it in person, and it is legal. I think that's fantastic, and I think it's going to be a good thing.
Have you placed a bet yet?
At the casino, I have not. I have not made it out there. I've been a little bit too busy to do that, but I can promise you I will be heading that way.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you can bet on Nebraska football games yet.
That is correct.
I don't think you can do that. But sports betting is obviously a huge deal. But you wonder if it becomes a big problem. You know, these apps, everybody's got an app, and you can play Keno via an app. You don't have to be live in-person betting. You can do that, obviously, with the mobile app and bet on games as well. That's what really concerns me.
I don't think you can do Keno. You can actually now do Nebraska Lottery, though. Powerball, Mega Millions, and all that type of stuff. But I understand the point, and I understand the all the arguments against it. But it's kind of one of those, I guess I'm more of the line of, you know what? Let me make a mistake if I'm going to make a mistake. And I don't think it ruins families and blah, blah, blah. Like it's like this epidemic of all of a sudden, because we have legalized gambling in Nebraska, of the 1.8 million people that live in the state, 1.6 are going to become, gambling addicts. I don't buy that.
I think some of them might. And some of them, it's just like alcohol. Some people make good choices with alcohol. Yeah. Others don't. But $220 billion have been bet on sports gambling since it was legalized by the Supreme Court. I don't know how many years it's been, but it's a big deal. And Nebraska, one of the last to do it, as we thought would be the case. I mean, Tom Osborne still lives here. So that is not a surprise that it's taken this long. But, hey, I'm going to go there, and I'm going to, especially during the college football season, I'm going to bet on it.
Well, the thing is, I've had the opportunity to place a bet on a sporting event for a long time. I just have. And I haven't been able to do it locally and walk up to a window and do it, but I had the capability of doing it. You know what? It's not a big deal. I'm not that big into sports gambling. But I always like knowing the lines, and it's interesting to follow it. And I'm a numbers guy. I'll crunch the numbers, and it's fun to look at different situations, where weather's involved with, football and certain quarterbacks and whatever the case may be. And it's all fun to, doing a prognostication type of deal in your own mind. And maybe you got a radio show, you do it, and maybe you go to a casino and you place a bet, whatever you want to do. I'm all in favor of it.
We talked about our love for LSU and LSU fans. I don't really necessarily love LSU football or basketball. I do like their fans, and I think Nebraska fans have grown close to LSU fans since back in the day that it was at Rosenblatt. And remember all the campers that they used to bring out, and you had Zesto just down the street, and Nebraska fans just kind of fell in love with LSU fans. But my first experience with LSU fans was not necessarily a good one. 1985, I remember going to the Sugar Bowl. Nebraska played LSU. Doug DeBose, I believe, was on that team. Craig Sundberg was the quarterback of that team. Walking down Bourbon Street, there was a big sign that said Tom Osborne is defamatory stuff. And my buddy Dave Edwards, who had about 15 hurricanes, was probably about 22, 20. I think we were 23 at that time in 1985. It said Tom Osborne is blah, defamatory statement. My buddy Dave Edwards says, I'm going to get that banner. I'm getting that banner. It was well protected. If you know anything about Bourbon Street, it's a rather narrow corridor of drunkards everywhere, and just a great, great time. But we were drinking Hurricanes. If you don't know what's in a Hurricane, I don't either. But I know it gets you inebriated
quickly
and very quickly. And by the sixth one, my buddy Eddie had it. He said, that thing was really driving him crazy. It was a defamatory statement about Tom Osborne, the most beloved coach in Nebraska football history. And so after the fifth one, he starts climbing a pole where LSU fans are yelling, "Tiger bait, Tiger bait, Tiger bait" in unison. And it's really loud. And Husker fans are yelling, "Go Big Red." They're just yelling, they're egging him on. They're trying to get him to get this banner down. And he gets it. He gets to the point where Tom Osborne that's all it says, and he rips down the defamatory part, and he's waving it around, and Nebraska fans are yelling at him, saying, what? I mean, they're all buying him like he needed more alcohol at that point, but they were buying him more alcohol. But he gets it down, and we did not find him until, I want to say, 6 o'clock the next morning, playing pool with a lady of the evening, I think. But what a great story. And Nebraska ends up winning that game against LSU in the Sugar Bowl.
They were down 10-0 as well at one point, and then they outscored them.
Dominated the second half of that game, and Nebraska beat LSU. And we actually became friends with some of those LSU people who thought it was really cool that this guy, and by the way, they were dumping beer on his head the whole time he's climbing up the pole, but he got it down. He got it done.
That's amazing.
That's
Nebraska,
my LSU story.
Nebraska they won the game 28-zip. I remember that was my senior year.
They
won
the game 28-zip?
Or they outscored them 28-zip after early in the second quarter. It was 10-0. So it's 28-10 final, but that was my senior year in high school. So I remember it quite well. I don't remember that part of the game.
Nobody does.
That did not get broadcast on national television, so I was a little disappointed.
One of the things I want to talk to, and we're going to talk to Brian Munson of Husker Online, a lot about recruiting. You're talking about what a big weekend it is for Nebraska football. But you've heard the criticism. Yeah, they're getting some wide receivers. They're getting Davon Hall, and they're getting Isaiah McMorris, and that's nice. But they're going after a lot of guys that are 2 stars or 3 stars or no stars. And they're going on these track times, or they're going on measurables. And I'm not sure. I mean, do you have any fear? What would you tell all these Nebraska fans who are saying, I don't know. I don't know necessarily what they're doing. And I'll give you an example. I mean, there's some guys like Braylon Prude. I think his name's Braylon Prude. 6'5", 190. He's from Shadow Creek, Texas. He has no offers outside Division I offers outside of Nebraska, but he's got measurables. He's one of those guys that looks like maybe you could build him into something, right? Maybe make him 230. He's got measurables. He's long. He's lanky. He's pretty athletic. Evan Taylor didn't have a lot of offers. He's the first recruit out of North Carolina for Nebraska football in a long, long time. 6'3", 175. Not a lot of people offering him. You had Donovan Jones, the defensive back from Omaha North. Looks like a pretty good athlete, but he didn't have a lot of offers out there.
Jake Peters from Cedar Falls, Iowa. He's a guy that's undersized. However, watch his film. He dominates people until he pancakes them.
Right.
Just
and
over
I
and
like
over.
that.
And then Callan Barta, the safety from Topeka. He's another guy. It's all measurables. He's a 0 star. He has nobody offering him that's a Power 5 or even Division I. Camden Cook, who is a legacy, he's technically a 0 star, but a kicker and a punter. But they like what he did at a camp. They saw it. And what I want to tell people that don't believe in all of this, I do from the standpoint of one guy specifically, Hassan Reddick. Because Hassan Reddick, any of those names that we just read off, and we just said that Nebraska is their only Division I
0 star
or Power 5. Yeah. And last time I checked, Hassan Reddick is one of the most destructive defensive players in the NFL, and he just made another Pro Bowl last year. I believe he knows what he's doing. I know for a fact everybody on that staff believes in the program that they have to take guys that have measurables, They know what they need, and they will teach them what they need to know to become great football players and, more importantly, great human beings, because you hear them talk about that a lot. Hey, we're going to make them great football players, but more importantly, we got to make them great people.
I remember talking to Jack Pearson. Of course, he passed on last year, one really close friend of the family, and the best recruiter in Nebraska football history. But he told me a story about going to see a guy that they ended up not recruiting in Louisiana, interestingly enough. But they discovered this guy that was undersized. He was 6'5", 6'6", about 220 pounds. And Jack really liked him. And he said, Tom, we got to get this other guy. I don't like the guy we went to recruit, but I like this guy, Neil Smith. I think he's got something. He was the last guy, I believe, Nebraska recruited in the early 80s, might have been right around 85. And they offer him, they put about 60 pounds on him. And he was obviously one of the better players in Nebraska football history, went on to a great NFL career as well, recently passed, right?
Neil Smith, no.
Is he, that confusing him with something? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But Neil Smith,
his son Keelan is coming to Nebraska.
Yeah, that's right. That's
year,
right. That's right. Keelan Smith. That's right. Thinking of somebody else. Sorry. But that's one of those stories where it happened all the time in Nebraska football history. I don't know that I want it in every class. I don't know. Will it be this way all the time?
Yeah,
you think
it will?
You think it'll be this way
all
the time?
Every single year.
What happens when Nebraska?
Talent.
What happens when Nebraska gets in on all the 4 stars and 5 stars that they want? They start winning 10, 12 games a year.
Do the 4 and 5 stars fit the culture? Do the 4 and 5 stars have the measurables that they think are what they need to work in their program? I mean, only time will tell. But the way he's building the program right now, I have faith that it's going to work based on the fact that it's worked in 2 other places, and he's been very successful. And he's bought in. And the one thing that him and his staff talked about, they joked about. Could you imagine with what we have for a program and the way we're doing things here at Baylor and when they were at Temple, if we had a brand that everyone knew, if we walked in, I don't know, with a scarlet and cream N on our shirt, can you imagine what we would do? That's what those guys have. They openly said this. That's what we talked about way back in the day. I believe it was on Bustin' with the Boys. He actually said that. Man, if we had a logo, what could we do with our program? Well, you know what? We're about to find out.
I hope they do continue to recruit this way, especially if it works. If it doesn't work, then you're going to have to find another way to recruit. But there is a belief out there that, hey, they're going after a bunch of guys that have measurables. They're going after track stars. And how do you make guys that aren't necessarily great at football yet? Some of these guys aren't yet. Otherwise, they would be more highly recruited. But they have measurables. They're fast. And you always heard that. In fact, I've heard Matt Rule say it a few times. We can teach them to play the sport.
Yeah.
They're athletic. We'll teach them to play football. I just hope that's true. But I really like the fact that they're trusting their eyes. They're having these guys in camp, and they're doing something that Tom Osborne used to do all the time. The pipeline was created in many cases with guys that are 6'2", 6'3", that nobody else was recruiting. Nebraska didn't care that their offensive linemen weren't 6'6", 6'7", 6'8". In fact, very few. Go back and look at them.
Oh, remember Jacob Hickman?
Yeah.
He was like 5. They had him listed at 6 foot, 285 or whatever. Yeah. He used to come into the gas station that I worked at. I was taller than he was. Like, he was genuinely like 5'9".
Yeah.
But he just dominated people.
And they went after guys that could run. And it sounds like Nebraska is doing that now. They're quick, not necessarily big. By the way, there were quite a few busts. I mean, the Nebraska offensive linemen have not. What was the last all-conference player that they've had? Cam obviously was pretty good.
Cam Jurgens, but
that was a local kid that they was recruited as a tight end.
Yeah.
In some ways, Scott Frost went outside the box on that one.
Yeah.
That's your best offensive lineman in recent memory. Nebraska hasn't produced along the offensive line, and maybe this different way of thinking is the way to go.
Well, you know what? I think us talking about that is a great question, and I think we need to ask it to Brian Munson.
We'll ask many questions like that. It's kind of why I started talking like this. I wanted to bring these questions up to Brian. We'll certainly talk about the latest commits. Davon Hall and Isaiah McMorris are big gets for Nebraska football. Will there be more to come? We'll talk to Brian Munson of Husker Online next.
General contractors, business owners, property owners. The success of your business requires doing business with the right people. And the right people when it comes to drywall, acoustical ceilings, and specialty products are at Premier Drywall. Kevin and his crew will give your project the response and attention it deserves.
You'll get all of the attention to detail and quality that you would expect from someone who's been in the business for 30 years. For your new builds, build-outs, or renovations, reach out to Kevin. Kevin at PremierDW.com. Premier Drywall in Lincoln.
Grandma and Grandpa, Mom and Dad, then the kids, and now the grandkids. Judson Irrigation has provided lawn sprinkler system design, installation, repair, and service to 4 generations. They're just like members of the family. Loyalty, trust, service. It's what you deserve and expect from Judson Irrigation.
Keep summer green. Call Judson Irrigation 402-420-6277 or judsonirrigation.com.
Hi, Sean Callahan here for Coppell Chevrolet GMC, and our big summer sales event is underway this month. Right now, get 0.9% interest rates. Yes, you heard right. 0.9% APR on select new Chevrolet and GMC vehicles, plus a $1,500 trade-in bonus on select Silverados and Sierras. You put all that together with some big Coppell discounts, and you have a tremendous buying experience. So stop on into the dealership or check us out online at CoppellCars.com. You'll be glad you did. All deals with approved credit.
Summertime is in full swing, and it's time to get to work on outdoor projects. Deck City is a great place to start as Lincoln's local source for everything decks. Deck City has everything you need to build the deck of your dreams, from treated lumber to Westbury aluminum railings and TimberTech composite decking. They offer advice from real deck professionals to give you proper guidance to make your project go smoothly. Call them today to schedule an appointment at 402-480-6671. Go online at deckcityne.com or visit their new location just north of 33rd and Cornhusker Highway. Deck City, your local deck experts.
Hi everyone, Kendall Warnock with A1 Automotive in downtown Lincoln. If you're looking for an automotive repair facility you can genuinely trust, we would be grateful for the opportunity to earn your business repairing your vehicle. We have ASE master technicians and qualified to work on a variety of vehicles from Hondas to Porsches, Jaguars to Toyotas, and Chevrolets to Fords. We pride ourselves on customer service and relationships, and we would be grateful for the opportunity to serve you. Give us a call at 402-477-4660. A1 Automotive, always honest answers.
Motor Food is Lincoln's hardest rocking food truck and cafe. Motor Food creates old school comfort food with a 21st century twist and lots of rock and roll attitude. Try the barbecue pulled pork mac and cheese, the grilled chicken Firebird sandwich, a 100% all beef split grilled hot dog, and any version of their funky fries. Stop by the cafe just behind Outback Steakhouse on 48th Street or catch the food truck out and about all spring and summer. Check out their menu, order carry out, or schedule a catering at motorfoodtruck.com.
There are some things that happen every day. In the morning, my paper gets delivered. Thank you. Around noon, my neighbor waters his flowers wearing a bathrobe and hip waders. Hello, Mr. Willis.
Where's my paper?
After dinner, the lady up the street walks her 14 poodles. And just before the 10 o'clock news, the Nebraska Lottery winning numbers are drawn for their daily games. Nebraska Pick 3, 2x2, and My Day. With Nebraska Pick 3, you choose your bet type. In 2x2, there's a $22,000 top prize. And with My Day, you choose a 6-digit date. They're all just $1 to play, with drawings every day. Oh, excuse me. Hi, Mr. Willis.
I'm still looking for my paper.
Guess which part of the day is my favorite?
Nebraska Pick 3, 2x2, and My Day top prize odds vary by game.
Integrated Life Choices has been inspiring opportunities for individuals with disabilities for more than 15 years in Lincoln and across Nebraska by offering a number of services. From group homes to independent living resources and job training, you'll find the support that allows people to live fulfilling lives. They're also hiring. If you're looking for a rewarding career supporting people with developmental disabilities, you can check out open positions along with learning more about services at ilc.net. Integrated Life Choices.
This is Big Red Esports on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Well, it's not Big Red Esports. It's actually Husker Rewind. But since we don't have any music that we can actually play that have our intros and our rejoins.
Someday.
Yeah, someday.
Someday when we get to be big. If we have more guests like this, Brian Munson of Husker Online will be there momentarily. It'll happen very quickly for us. Brian, how are you? How are things?
I am doing well. How about you guys?
We're good. We're ready to talk a little recruiting. It's been a big weekend for Nebraska football. Is it going to get bigger?
I think that's safe to say. There's been some good fireworks. I mean, let's not go ahead and overshadow what's happened on Friday, with Isaiah McMorris and Davon Hall jumping in. I mean, I don't think, I definitely know that nobody's quoted me as saying that Nebraska was going to get both the Bellevue West wide receivers, for maybe the last 2 months. I just didn't feel like it was going to be a possibility. Coach McGuire, he did a fantastic job kind of pulling things together for Nebraska at the end. They keep both Thunderbirds home. That's terrific. And then I think, from what we can kind of make of the weekend, there's fireworks to come. I think that, the top player in the state was in Lincoln this weekend, Carter Nelson, the tight end from Ainsworth, Nebraska, and several other guys that I feel like, potentially could jump into the class here very shortly.
One of those guys, and we're talking about receivers, I'm going to throw a name out, Ernest Campbell. I thought this was a misprint, but he just ran a 10.2200. Like that, and he's in high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
But everything we're hearing is he's a guy that's a pretty heavy lean towards Nebraska right now.
Yeah, I ran a sub 22 second 200 meter too, I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, just an incredible, absolutely an incredibly quick player. One of those. Look, I think it's very safe to say that what the Nebraska staff wanted to do, what Rule wanted to do, he really wanted to improve the athletic profile of the football team. And he has done that. I mean, just with the last class alone and the number of guys that they were bringing in that were like 10-4 and faster, those, are very much, very possibly some of the fastest guys that are on campus now. And that included Bryce Turner. Bryce Turner was a sub 10-3 guy. Now you've got a guy like Campbell, that's pushing low 10-2s. And I think this is all part of a bigger plan. I think that, that Nebraska just felt like, and Coach Rule really felt like there was a need to get more athletic. And I feel like that's definitely something that he's done. I think if Nebraska gets Campbell, that there's only one player that Campbell could be in fear of losing that kind of fastest man title to. And it's if Nebraska got Gatlin Bear, and Gatlin Bear ran a sub 10-2, in Austin. I think he ran like a 10-1-7. So, and you're right. These are high school guys. And there's a reason why when they're coming in for official visits to Lincoln, that they're not just talking to the football team. They're also talking to the track coaches.
Brian Munson of Husker Online visiting with us. It does seem like this staff isn't afraid to pull the trigger on any recruit that they deem that is worthy of a Nebraska scholarship offer. But there are some that I've heard, from guys, hey, they're offering a bunch of track guys that don't play a lot of football in some instances. How do you respond to that?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about the guys that have come out of like summer camp and talking about the people that, that Coach Rule and his staff have had a chance to work with one-on-one, during that, kind of tight time frame of 3 or 4 hours or whatever it is, to have those chances to do camps. I think that they do a reasonably good job of understanding, number one, who's coming in and knowing who the guys are, maybe that they're going to have to take a closer look at because they could be a guy that they would want to take a look and offer. And I think that when they get a chance then to kind of in-person evaluate, in-person work with, and then kind of see them, how competitive they are, how coachable they are, how are they as a person? Do they feel like that they're a great fit athletically? How well do they test? I mean, some of these guys, like Rex Guthrie was a guy that was in, and we could obviously see, more fireworks from this weekend with him, for Littleton, Colorado Heritage High School, when he decides, or if he decides to commit to Nebraska. And he's a guy that just tested incredibly well. He went all out. I mean, there were, from people that I know that were there that day that watched him, there were veins bulging out of his neck and getting after it a little bit, and they loved his style. And if you watch his film, you can see all that. So, I mean, it's very applicable. I mean, it's just a matter of, okay, is that kid that I'm watching on that huddle film, is this the same dude I'm seeing here in practice, or what's the disconnect? When they go back and have to do some stuff. And only a few times have I heard, like the Nebraska staff had to kind of quickly go away, quickly do an evaluation, and then kind of make an assessment of whether or not they were going to go ahead and make an offer. But it feels like they still had a process in place. But there were guys like Quinn Clark, and that's going to be a guy I think that we'll be talking about here in a couple of weeks that potentially jumps into the class as well. And I felt like, Nebraska was pretty ready to go ahead and make an offer, likely going into the camp. And while he was there, and after he had won his first rep, Matt Rule walked right over to him and said, "You got an offer." It was like Oprah Winfrey handing out free vehicles. I mean, that was essentially what happened right there on the field of summer camp at Memorial Stadium.
Hey, one other name, one of the things that has been missing from the 2024 recruiting class so far is a running back. Now, Nathan Frazier would be fantastic. But after this weekend, I've heard some really good things about Quan Lacey.
Yes, and you should. I think that this is a guy, I think Quan Lacey is a guy that gets a little bit overlooked. He didn't have a great year the year before. He was, missed a few games. He was beat up when he was out there. But if you watch his film and you see a guy that, Lancaster High School, which is, I mean, living in Dallas. I mean, if you're watching Dallas Metroplex football, you're going to talk about Lancaster High School. They have got some dudes. They have dudes every single year. And Lacey is a guy that they would put at wide receiver. They would put him out at the outside position. They put him in the slot position. They would let him run downhill. They let him run some stretch plays. And it's exactly how Nebraska can kind of visualize seeing him. He's a tough runner. Number one, he's super strong. And when he gets loose, he pulls away from dudes. And this is, 5A football. It's not the largest classification of football in Dallas, but it is the second largest classification it's not the largest classification in Texas, but it is the second largest in Texas, which is still saying something for the level of teams that he is playing against. So, very tough kid. If you go back and if you really are interested and you want to go back and check some stuff out on him, go back to his days as a sophomore when he was at Nolan Catholic, which is a TAP school in Fort Worth. Still very good competition. And I think he had like 1,500 yards rushing as a sophomore. So this is a very talented dude that just kind of had that off season as a junior, got used a little bit differently, but he's a versatile athlete. It's going to be very interesting and very fun to watch him play this senior year.
Hey, Brian, to follow up on that, everything that you just said about him reminds me of a guy that played here for a couple of years, a few years back, named Wandale Robinson.
I agree. And I think, I don't think it's necessarily the right guy because Lacey's a lot larger than Robinson is, but I think that they have some similarities between them. I mean, I think that Lacey runs, he's just got that size to where he can kind of bowling ball some guys. And Wandale had that capability too. While I feel like Wandale, might have been misused a little bit by the Nebraska staff, and that might have been proven a little bit by Kentucky in the numbers that he put up and the honors that he got and what he's doing in the NFL, obviously. But similar skill set. I don't think Lacey's quite as elusive. But what he lacks in that elusiveness, he makes up for big time in size and strength.
Yeah. Brian Munson of Husker Online, our guest. I want to talk a little bit about recruiting philosophy. Greg Austin, the previous offensive line coach, seemed to like guys that were a little bigger, little 6'6", 6'7" guys. It doesn't seem to bother Donovan Raiola to go after guys that are a little smaller, as long as they have some athletic ability. The Jake Peters recruitment, the Landon Davidson. Am I missing something? Does it feel like the recruiting philosophy for offensive linemen has changed at Nebraska?
No, I don't think you're missing anything at all. And I'm not sure if it's 100%, Coach Raiola, or if there isn't also a little bit of Coach Rule there in his ear. I mean, look, I think all you have to do is kind of turn your TV on Sunday, not Saturday, Sunday, and really pay attention to the guys that are playing bookend offensive tackle. Are they 6'8"? Are they 6'9"? Teddy Prohaska is, he's an outlier. He's an outlier, and I know that he's been hurt a couple times the last 2 seasons, and it sucks. But he's a tremendous player, and he's not a waist bender. He's a knee bender. He has great technique, but I think that as you kind of grow vertically, you do have a tendency a little bit to want to bend a little bit more at the waist and have that real kind of keep low, drop an anchor, keep that leverage out there on the edge. And I think that that's tougher for those taller guys to do. When you stretch much past 6'6", it gets a little bit more difficult. Those guys that are a little squattier, they have a lower center of gravity. They can certainly not, get ghosted. When you get the Von Millers coming around the edge and they're dropping that shoulder and you're swinging at it a little bit. That's exactly what those guys are setting up for. Those guys are hoping that you're coming at them at that 6'8" height. So I think that there is a bit of an interesting, theory about, maybe not taking that or getting a little shorter, across the offensive line. Plus, it's not like, Daniel Kalen, or other quarterbacks here before in the past. Maybe Heinrich Harburg wouldn't have a problem, but seeing over the top of those guys isn't easy. And you need to have those passing lanes. You need to be able to spot those open receivers down the field. So I think there's a couple theories that I think people could string together about why to get a little bit shorter. But I think athleticism is certainly a big part of that. And Peters has got a lot of it. I mean, just watching him kind of get after it and how far downfield it is, it's kind of like the blind side and watching the guy dump a guy into the trash can after he drives him all the way down the football field. And really, Landon Davidson's the same way, too. I mean, that's a dude, as he gets his hands inside, you can just forget about it. So, yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to watch how that kind of the evolution of how they're going to kind of keep, profiling that position and what they kind of do. I think Grant Bricks is a little bit of an exception, but I think that 6'5.5" is maybe about as long as you're going to see those offensive tackles kind of get stretched out to.
Brian Munson from Husker Online joining us here on Husker Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Preferred walk-ons have committed as well. James Williams is one. Fullback Isaac Dickey, kicker Nico Adamanelli, and a really, really interesting one that's going to join the 23 class, and that is quarterback Luke Longval. What do you make of that commitment as a preferred walk-on?
I'm telling you, I think it's I think number one, I think everybody can kind of point back at this post-grad camp is a very highly successful idea by Coach Rule. I know, having a son that's kind of working with the coaching staff at UNK, they were in attendance for that post-grad camp that they had in Lincoln a week or so ago. And it was a big hit. It's something that they're talking about doing now next year as well. And they want to try to find those guys that are out there, that are free agents, basically, that are kind of hanging out, looking for an opportunity. COVID has really impacted things, I think, in ways that we just don't totally understand yet when it comes to recruiting and why some guys get skipped over and some guys never really get that opportunity, or, this guy becomes a free agent a little bit later on because all of a sudden he can get eligible. So it gets really interesting, I think, there in this time frame kind of leading into the summer. But I think the fullback camp, what another tremendous idea, and what another way to kind of tug at the heartstrings of Husker Nation, because I think everybody identifies with, the Willie Millers and the Corey Schlesingers and the Macavickas, and they want those kinds of days and the success that kind of came along with it. I think people identify that kind of success with that kind of power, running game. And I think as you add USC and UCLA and these teams that have athletes like, Nebraska really doesn't have necessarily in the state in the quantities that they have, and they have that ability to kind of pull a little bit more nationally than what Nebraska does. I think a great way to go ahead and combat that is just run straight at them and tire those guys out. So I think if Nebraska is building themselves like that, they really could build themselves to have some success.
A lot has been made, Brian, about Nebraska's young coaching staff, and in particular, Garrett McGuire. I mean, the knock on him was he's too young. You're going to lose wide receiver commits because he's too young. Well, that hasn't happened. In fact, you gained 2 in Davon Hall and Isaiah McMorris. Do you think this continues with Garrett McGuire, that he proves his recruiting chops?
I think he does. That was one of the guys that got mentioned multiple times, obviously, this weekend with me, talking to Quinn Clark. He really couldn't remember McGuire too much from camp, but he did really connect with Coach and, talking to Malachi Coleman about Coach, over the weekend, because Malachi really helped out with showing Clark around. Malachi really, really likes Coach McGuire. It's one of those things where, it's been interesting to watch, and then, obviously people were a little bit concerned, the references to Doogie Howser and whatever else you want to kind of put out in front of it. This is a guy that has chops. He's got those football chops. He just, sometimes a guy like Matt Rule has to come along and just give a guy like that an opportunity and just let him fly. And I think that's what we're seeing, and I think it's wonderful, because I think it's not only the recruits that are responding well, but, obviously you've heard stories about, how the players, mainly end up in his office. He's a very relatable guy. He's just a few years removed from being in their shoes. So I think it's one of those missing dynamics that, that Nebraska fans and Nebraska hasn't had in quite a while, to have like one of those younger staff members around. And now they got it. And I think it's going to be very fun to kind of watch him develop.
Well, it'll be fun to see how the rest of the summer plays out. I'm guessing this won't be the last time we'll have you on this summer. I don't think this staff is anywhere close to done.
No, I think if we met up again in 2 more weeks, we might have 4 more commitments, even in the dead period, to talk about. So I think people just need to kind of go ahead and just stay tuned, because I think there's still a lot of stuff that's going to happen out of these last 3 or 4 weeks in June.
I think we just booked Brian for 2 weeks from now.
I think so.
There we go.
I'm in.
Brian Munson, Husker Online. Brian, thanks for the time. You're the best.
Have a great evening, guys.
There you go. Brian Munson, Husker Online of the On3 Network. Good stuff. Oh, good weekend.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's done. What do you think about the whole Garrett McGuire thing? Because there was that knock on him that you're going to lose wide receiver commits, and I think there was a couple.
Yeah,
there were a few that said, I don't know about this young guy.
Yeah, no, there was a top flight guy that I think it was a 5-star. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but yeah, he was like, that coach they got. I just, I don't know.
And he does talk
that's
young,
great.
But I kind of want my coaches to be able to relate to 18, 19, 20-year-olds.
But at the same time, not everybody's going to love every coach. I mean, you're going to have other guys that have the exact same feeling, just the polar opposite way. They're like, oh my gosh, he's not an old guy yelling at me the way, I've always been taught from my high school days with the, whatever. It's to each their own. And, if guys don't like the way he recruits them or coaches them or whatever, then, go play somewhere else. And I hope you have a lot of success. But the guys that come to Nebraska, everything we're hearing, it's nothing but positive out of Garrett McGuire.
By the way, we haven't mentioned the College World Series for a bit. It's still going.
No, it's over.
Is it officially over?
It's officially over. 24-4 is the final.
My goodness.
All kinds of
that
records.
Has to be the highest scoring game in College World Series history. I mean,
maybe for a single team, but I know it's not the most runs scored, because there's been championship games that were like
for a single
22-20.
Yeah, that's what I meant. For a single team.
It might be.
I'll look it up.
Yeah,
we'll look it up during the break. But
hey, you know what? We can jump out of the stream onto the bank and go back on the radio too.
Hey, let's do that. Let's take a break and then go back on the air.
Yeah,
the regular air.
The regular air.
Because I think it's free now. It's available to us.
Yeah.
He's Mike Melby. I'm Tom Stevens. It's Husker Rewind. We do it every Sunday from 5 to 7, and you'll hear us live after this break.
Too many people believe that chronic pain, allergies, or illness are permanent and something you're stuck with. Novotny Nutrition and Wellness has been proving that narrative wrong for 29 years and changing lives for the better in the process. Their team is trained in the newest, most advanced pain-relieving techniques and ways to deal with toxins, allergies, pollution, and emotion that make you ill. Call today for a free consultation at 531-254-5695 or go to novotnynutritionandwellness.com. Novotny Nutrition and Wellness, located at 7th and Superior.
Keep your planter. Upgrade your technology with a John Deere Performance Upgrade Kit from Landmark Implement. Choose from ExactEmerge, MaxEmerge 5, or MaxEmerge 5E electric drive row units. Take your planter to the next level. Improve yield potential and profitability without buying new. Get new technology, increased performance, and confidence from your planter that's already in your shed. Contact your local Landmark location to order your John Deere Performance Upgrade Kit and experience the Landmark difference.
If you want to make new floor shopping easier, come to O Street Carpet. Hi, I'm Steve Carper. Our flooring professionals can help you choose the best flooring for you, your family, and your budget. We eliminate the confusion. Even better, you'll be enjoying your new flooring much sooner. No 6 or 8 week waits. We'll install right away and save you money on installation. Floor shopping made easy every day at O Street Carpet. O Street Carpet. 1732 O Street. Family owned and operated. Always the best value.
This is Brian at Midwest Bank, and we've been proudly serving clients in the Lincoln community since 2008, and we're excited to open a second location in January 2024 at 70th and Pioneers Boulevard. Our new branch will provide all the convenient services you're looking for in a bank, along with the friendly staff we're known for. Whether you're starting a business or expanding your business, our team is here for you. Your community, your bank, Midwest Bank. Find out more at midwestbank.com, member FDIC.
Plains Cover Crop is your one-stop seed shop. Call us now for spring and summer forages, CRP mixes, and fall cover crop blends. We do farm-specific consulting for practical and efficient seed blends to fit your geography and goals. With a very diverse inventory, we will tailor a blend just for you. We're also looking for contract growers, and we buy and sell rye. Find us online at plainscovercrop.com. Timeless agronomy practices paired with modern technology. East Highway 20 in Orchard and across Nebraska.
Where will your path take you, traveler? To seek fortune in a new career, or on a journey to distant lands for a well-deserved vacation? Wherever you go, one distraction could spell disaster. You can change your fate, adventurer. Don't drive distracted. Paid for by the NDOT Highway Safety Office.
Usually, to get a skybox view of a Nebraska football game, you need to be a drone, a hawk, or a fighter jet. But sitting in an actual skybox is a lot more comfortable. So, enter the Nebraska Lottery's Lucky for Life ticket snap. Until July 10th, buy a Lucky for Life ticket and enter for a chance to win Nebraska football skybox season tickets or other great ticket prizes. Sure, fighter jets are cool, but there's no legroom.
Lucky for Life top prize odds 1 in 30 million.
Are you here for the job interview?
I just saw that ad that said, apply here for dream job.
What qualifications do you have?
What exactly would I be doing?
Well, this is a dream job. You would be daydreaming.
All day?
Start at 8 a.m. and spend the day dreaming about all the millions you could win playing Mega Millions from the Nebraska Lottery.
I'm good at that.
We want people with big imaginations, not just the usual yachts and exotic vacations.
Like a city built with bouncy houses or limo for dogs.
You're hired.
Mega Millions top prize odds 1 in 302 million.
Attention all Wings fans. 89-cent wings are back on Tuesdays at Buffalo Wings and Rings in Lincoln. Enjoy the best wings in town for boneless or traditional at a price that makes the whole family happy. And now at the Williamsburg Village Wings and Rings, you can enjoy $1.50 tall boys in Bud Light, Coors Light, Busch Light, and Michelob Ultra every day after 7 p.m. and all day on Sundays. Get to Wings and Rings today and make sure to stop by on Tuesdays for 89-cent wings.
Back, Tom Stevens, Mike Melby. I won't play the re-intro because of copyright infringement laws. We can't play our own. I'm not going to explain because we already explained before. But welcome back, Tom Stevens, Mike Melby. It's Husker Rewind. We do it every Sunday from 5 until 7. By the way, if you missed the College World Series today, Florida has tied that series at a game apiece. 24-4 was the final. So there will be a game 3 in Omaha at the College World Series tomorrow. So there you go. I don't think we're going to have a show next week, Mike.
I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. It's 4th of July weekend.
It's
I think we're
4th
all
of
gonna be
July
busy.
weekend. I just came back from, by the way, Orlando last weekend.
How was it?
It was fun. I realized that my kids are getting old enough where they don't really love Orlando and Disney World, maybe like they did, that they remember. You want to go back because it's nostalgic and you remember it as being great. And then you get there as an adult and you go, oh yeah, the weather's great, but it's way too hot in Orlando this time of year. So I did play golf and I hung out by the pool, but walking from place to place at Magic Kingdom is not really my thing.
I've never had much of a desire to go. Tracy though absolutely loves it, and she wants to go back down there now with the new airline.
Yeah.
Maybe we will here sometime since
that was a great part of it. Redway is fantastic. It's
Nice.
direct flight. You're there in 2.5 hours or whatever it took to get there. You get off the plane, you get your bags. Heck, we just stored them in the overhead compartment. Grab your bags, you're out the door, get an Uber, and you're at your condo within a half an hour. So that part of it was really nice. I mean, it is really nice to have a direct flight to Orlando, and I think Dallas is in the mix, and Vegas,
Nashville.
There's a lot of good destinations. So that is something that Nebraska has desperatable needed, and it was good to see. Nebraska as a whole, because I think you're going to see people come from Omaha. And from surrounding areas to take flights out of Lincoln now.
Well, with the rates, that's the key thing.
Yeah.
So
it was really cool. I enjoyed doing that, and I'm glad Lincoln finally has a direct flight that I can use all the time.
That's somewhere other than Chicago,
right? And that, Chicago or Denver seems to be
the one thing. Is fun, interesting little note. I'm a big fan of Jennifer Lawrence. Always have been. Silver Linings Playbook is still one of my favorite movies.
Love that movie.
I was never a Hunger Games fan. I mean, they're okay movies, just not really my thing. But she's got a new movie out called No Hard Feelings. And it's an adult comedy. Okay. Bottom line, it's Hangover. There's bad words. There's nudity. It's a grown-up comedy.
It's rated R?
Yeah, I know. It's really good. It's not over the top funny. It's not, laugh out loud 40 times during the movie, but 4 or 5, yes. Yeah. But the story of the entire thing actually is fantastic. I was actually really, really impressed with it. And that would get 2 thumbs up from me.
Silver Linings Playbook is one of my favorite movies.
Same here.
Great movie. And so, hey, I would see that again in a heartbeat. Nebraska was maybe, and still is. There was a couple of recruits in town. Or there's one big recruit, really big, 7-1 in town over the weekend, potential transfer from Washington State. I don't know how hard Nebraska was going after this guy. But then came the news later in the week that Kirk Krissa was back on the market from West Virginia and that he might take a peek at Nebraska. That news has died right during our show, actually. Yep. We kill stuff sometimes. During the show, Kirk Krissa looks to be staying even after the resignation of Bob Huggins, who is no longer going to be the coach at West Virginia because of some things that he shouldn't have said on the radio.
And a aggravated DUI.
Yeah, well, he's done that throughout his career. It never seemed to hurt his career. He's been drinking for a long, long time at a very high level. But he's also said some things on the radio that didn't help him at all. So Kirk Krissa was available. He had visited Lincoln. It looked like Nebraska was his number 2 pick. He chose West Virginia in part because he got $600,000 to go to school there.
That's the report.
Through name, image, and likeness. And one of the cuts of Nebraska basketball has been they're not spending enough on players. I don't necessarily need guys who are going to choose Nebraska because of NIL money. But if they're not getting guys because of their lack of NIL aggressiveness, that also concerns me. Not that I had some concerns about Kirk Krissa and his past. He seemed to be a guy that got a lot of technicals, that said some things during games that didn't always promote happiness within a team organization. So I don't necessarily think he was the right guy for Lincoln, for Nebraska, but I am concerned going forward if Nebraska continues to lose guys because they're not offering enough money via NIL.
Oh, I would agree. And, that's where you look to the 1890 Collective and go, you got a shiny new toy in downtown Lincoln that's, coming up on 10 years old now. But at the same time, you've got some of the best facilities in all of college basketball. And you still have a team that has not won an NCAA tournament game. As far as Kirk Rissa goes, when I saw he was going to jump back in the portal, my exact words, none of them were cuss words, were that sucks. Because I then was worried he was going to come here. He to me, he's a locker room cancer guy. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems
I don't know
like
that he is or isn't.
The way he acted on the court and just the way he talked about himself, he's not a guy that it would be easy for me to cheer for. I know that, but regardless, he's not coming. Aaron Eulis is going to be our point guard more than likely, but keep your eye on Ramel Lloyd.
Yeah, but also Fred Hoiberg said something interesting this week during the presser where a bunch of guys spoke. I think Jamarcus Lawrence was one of them. He said Tominaga and Jamarcus Lawrence will be your ball handlers on this team.
Yep.
He didn't mention Ramel Lloyd as the lead ball handler. He didn't mention Aaron Eulis as the lead ball handler. He didn't mention Kirk Rissa because Kirk Rissa was not on the roster and still isn't. He didn't mention his own son, Sam Hoiberg, who I think could certainly handle the ball. What I thought about when Kirk Rissa was potentially available for Nebraska basketball was there may not be enough basketballs. You've got Tominaga, you've got Lawrence, you've got Sam Hoiberg, you've got Ramel Lloyd, who apparently is showing signs that he might be able to turn the thing around. I mean, obviously redshirted as a freshman. And then you got Eulis. I just don't know that you needed Kirk Rissa. He would have been a nice toy to play with. And to see, and when you go to Spain this summer, which is happening very quickly, it will be nice to see how that chemistry comes together. But the fact that he's not coming doesn't bother me that much.
No, it doesn't. I'm happy about it. Like I said, I think they've got a great group. And after listening to Rink Mass talk and Jamarcus Lawrence, somebody put out a tweet, and I can't remember who it was, in reference to Jamarcus Lawrence's press conference. And they kind of jokingly said, I feel like I'm listening to like a 36-year-old, 17-year veteran tell me about his play and his team and his expectations. Like the maturity level with Jamarcus Lawrence, not letting things get too big and never letting the little things just slip through the cracks. I mean, he just really seems to have a very good understanding of what he needs to be for this team next year and how he needs to help, continue the chemistry and everything that they had going late in the season last year.
I don't know who the point guard is. Hopefully Eulis can be that point guard for Nebraska. I think one of the reasons that Tominaga might have wanted to come back to college basketball is to prove to the NBA that he can be a point guard.
Yeah.
He bulked up, and you've heard Fred Hoiberg say how much weight they put on him. I think Tominaga might have had something to do with that. I don't think they just came out and put weight on him. I think he worked hard in the weight room, and now he's gone from 6'2", 170 to 6'2", 185. And hopefully that will take the Big Ten toll. He'll take less of a toll in the Big Ten due to his work in the weight room. But I'd like to see him given an opportunity to become the point guard for Nebraska.
Well, that's the whole thing is I think he has to be, just because of twofold. For Nebraska to be successful, he's going to have to be a guy that is going to be able to take guys off the dribble because he has that ability. And it gives him the opportunity to prove to the scouts in the NBA that I'm a guy that can do everything you need a 6'2" guard to do. I'm going to shoot the lights out of the gym, but you got to be able to handle the ball and you got to be able to play defense. And getting the extra weight, I think, is actually going to help him more on the defensive end. And
that's what I thought as well, because
Yeah,
he got pushed around at times. I was really impressed with his ability offensively to, if you watch Keisei Tominaga, by the way, I played golf in Orlando with a couple of people who happen to be Japanese. The Tanaka family loves the Tominaga family.
Nice.
And Ray and his son, Brendan, I played with in Orlando, terrible golfers, great guys. But they wanted to talk about Keisei Tominaga. Tominaga a lot because they're big fans. They like Japanese. Japanese tend to like Japanese athletes, and he's a big star in Japan. I think he has over 100,000 followers or more on Twitter. I think it's more than that. But they want to talk about Keisei. But I think Keisei can be that guy. It would be so fantastic if he could make the NBA. Even if he doesn't, he's going to go back home and play in Japan and probably make $1 million a year.
One of the things from that press conference that stood out to me, and it just makes me laugh, and it makes me like Fred Hoiberg a little bit more. But when your head coach brings up the fact that how much he loves the enthusiasm and everything else that one of his players plays with, i.e. Keisei Tominaga, and he goes, I mean, he flipped off the crowd at Penn State. How awesome is that? Like he's celebrating it.
Yeah.
That just, it cracked me up. And I thought it's also, it kind of shows the little bit of just like truly human side. Like that's a coach normally is not going to say that. But when you have a young man that plays with just that passion, that energy,
right.
And loves the game and just loves life the way that Keisei Tominaga does. It's awesome that he's here, and I think Fred truly enjoys.
And by the way, he's not the first guard at Nebraska, I think, to flip off a fan base. And we haven't always loved it in the past. Maybe the way we've liked it with Keisei, but Keisei can get away with things, I think, because he does it with a smile on his face. I mean, he plays the game with a sheer love of the game, and he plays it with effort. I mean, if you watch him play, especially on the offensive end of the court, he never stops running.
No,
like he is running all the time to try to get open. I would not want to guard him. He's that type of guy that obviously once he catches it and he has any space available, he's going to make the shot. But part two of the story is that you actually have to chase him around the gym all night long. And then if you foul him, he's going to go to the free throw line and make free throws. I just think something special could be coming, not just for Keisei, but Nebraska basketball this year. Maybe I'm dying in because I bought in so many times and people hate me for it. But I'm doing it again. I'm gonna do it again.
The other reason you kind of love rooting for a guy like that because he makes 35-foot threes on a consistent basis.
Yep. So we'll see where it goes. I'm really interested to see how this team comes together because I think they're going to have to in Spain. They're really going to have to. In Spain because they're not going to have Rick Mass. I don't think he's going to be available. He's playing for his Olympic team. There was one other, Bryce Williams, I don't think will be available during the time in Spain as well.
Josiah Alex going to be limited, I know, because he's coming back from the foot surgery. Juwan Gary's probably going to be a little limited. He's almost 100%, but you don't want to rush that with that shoulder.
And maybe that'll be good in some ways because these guys will have time to, the guys that will be available will play a lot of basketball. Maybe that part of it will be good.
But the whole thing is, look at that roster right now. You can go 11 guys deep and find a guy that you're like, boy, if he plays a lot this year, man, we're going to have some things go right for us. There's not one of those guys on that roster.
No.
Really, you're sitting there, you're going, all you think about is strengths with every single guy that's currently on the Nebraska basketball roster. Yep. A guy that's going to probably be an 8th or 9th man is Sam Hoiberg. But look at what he did at the end of last season, near the end of games, his basketball IQ, the way he played defense, the steals that he came up with, the shots that he hit, the free throws that he made, the decisions that he made to not do something. And it's like, hey, you know what? Sam's got to come off the bench because somebody's in foul trouble. Who cares? Oh, you know what? We need Ramel Lloyd. He's a redshirt freshman. He's only played in 7 games, and it's a big non-conference. We need him to come in. You know what? I've got pretty good confidence he's going to come in and make a play.
How many times have we looked at the roster and said, yeah, good player, selfish. Good player, a little selfish. I don't think that about Josiah Alec. That's never been a part of his resume. You don't think that about Juwan Gary. You certainly don't think that about Sam Hoiberg or Blaze Cada, who doesn't demand the basketball. He just goes in there and plays defense and rebounds. Jamarcus Lawrence admitted that maybe he, against Minnesota, took a few too many shots in that game, but he's not a selfish player. Rick Mass doesn't have that identity. Tominaga, you want taking a lot of shots. Maybe you think he takes too many shots. I never have.
No.
CJ Wilcher is at times maybe taken not too many shots, but bad shots. I think that ended in the second part of last year when he started to go to rim more. So I think you're exactly right. You nailed it. I don't think this is a selfish team at all.
No.
In fact, there might be a few guys that in some points of the game, you're saying, why don't you shoot more? You're making shots. Shoot more.
Well, exactly. And just the way that the offense ran last year, and I think it's going to go back to more of an up-tempo like it was later in the season versus the more defensive-minded and oriented when Juwan Gary and Emmanuel Bandamel were healthy. And I don't necessarily think that we have a huge drop-off. Bandamel was unbelievable defensively. You know Gary is, and he's back. But I still think there's going to be a defensive identity to this team, but it's going to be a little bit more ball movement and a little bit more of that 5-out style that Hoiberg ran the first 3 years. But he kind of figured out, because it was funny, because we were talking about it, in November and December and January last year about the difference of the possessions per game and just it was literally a black and white North Pole, South Pole difference in style of play. And that after the 2 injuries, it became a mesh of those 2 styles of plays.
Yeah.
The defensive intensity maintained. Now, granted, they gave up some open looks. They gave up some easy baskets. It wasn't as dominant defensively, but it was far better than it had been when it was focused on offense only. But then that offense and the way they moved without the ball, and that was the whole key. It wasn't just Tominaga. It wasn't just C.J. Wilcher that was moving without the ball. It was everybody.
Right.
And
There were certain guys, the first part of the season, they played great defense, and we can't argue with that. And there were certain guys in the second part of the season, they tried to play great defense, but they didn't have the capability to be Juwan Gary or Bandamel. I mean, they just did, but they could shoot. And you had to recognize the fact that you had to guard Jamarcus Lawrence. Oh, by the way, he can drive to the rim. You can't ever leave Tominaga because he's getting more minutes because the other guys were injured. They just became a better team as a whole. But this team potentially is a lot better than the team that led the Big Ten from February on.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's exaggerated hype when you talk about the potential of Nebraska basketball, but that's what I do. I hype Nebraska basketball because I love it so much. I want it to be great, but I actually think there's potential for it to be great. We're going to take a break in about 10 minutes, and then we'll talk to Jalen Reyes, and we know it's a good interview because we already did it.
Yeah.
It's a really good interview.
Well, and we teased it last hour because one of the questions that I wind up asking him is I said, well, June 15th was the day that you could contact 2025 recruits, and you did. And Campbell Flynn, Kerry Leimbach, and Terea Sigler all said, yeah, I'm in. I want to come to Nebraska and play volleyball. I said, are you done? Well, the answer to that question, I will let Jalen answer when we play that interview. But that's the first time I've had the opportunity to chat with him. And you had mentioned that you'd had him on in the past on other shows, and you just raved about the type of interview that he is and just the type of person that he is.
He's a good guy.
I think he undersold it. He's so fun to listen to, so insightful and thoughtful with the way that he answers questions. It's going to be a fantastic interview. So make sure you stick around for that here in about 10 minutes.
We're not going to talk a lot about baseball, but maybe a little in the second segment about the Rob Childress effect. But I did want to mention this because we've been watching the College World Series. Mentioned it's going to Game 3 after the big win by Florida today over LSU, 24-4. This was not a good example of a short game, but it was mostly because of the scoring in this game. But the pitch clock has really helped college baseball. The average game times have been in the College World Series, that is 3 hours and 2 minutes. It's the shortest since 2012 when games went 2 hours and 54 minutes. And there have been a couple of games. There was one game earlier, Oral Roberts, the elimination game that they played, went 3 hours and 30 minutes, but that was mostly because of multiple video reviews. They do allow 6 visits, I believe.
Six defensive visits for visits to the mound to talk to pitchers, and they allow 3 offensively.
Right. And there was at a point where a coach came out for the 7th time, and then he had to wear a shirt that says, "Yes, I can count." But that was kind of funny. Yes, I can count. But what do you think of the pitch clock overall?
I love it.
Yeah,
baseball's never been my game. I know
it hates change. Baseball, the one thing I hated about baseball is it wouldn't change. And finally it's changed, and it's been for the better. The pitch clock being just one, they've made several reviews. You can't just step off the mound. You can't just scratch your butt all the time, and you got to get up there. And obviously, that's a big part of it. The pitch clock. You can throw to first as many times as you want, and I don't disagree with that because you're trying to pick the guy off. But you can't fake throw to first all the time without the pitch clock. And if it does go off, it's a ball. It's just a great rule. It's a rule that has happened in Major League Baseball as well, and it's made the game better. It's sad to think the oldest pastime took this long to change.
It's probably why they always joke about us old people being stuck in our ways. I mean, we
Right.
don't want to change.
But-
Change is scary. At the same time, like, I'm not a big baseball guy. I never have been. Nick Sennert loves baseball. I'd love to get his take on what he thinks of all of these changes. But anything you can do to get the game to move faster. I'm a baby boomer. I'm an early baby boomer too. I'm a guy that you would think would love to for everything to just take it easy. Now I'm kind of falling in with the Gen Z and the millennials where I'm like, man, let's pick up the pace here. Let's get going. Let's change some things. How can we be more efficient? How can we get more done? How can we pack more in our day? How can we have more fun? And getting the games to move along and make it less about, well, I got my routine where I tap my cleats twice on my left foot and I do it on the heel, and then I do it once on the right on the toe, and then once on the left on the toe, and then two on the back
Right.
on the left, and then I got to adjust my gloves. And you're like, okay, dude, you just spent 45 seconds explaining the routine that takes you 90 seconds to do between pitches. No offense, I don't care.
Right.
Step in the box, swing, hit home run, strike out. But stop with all of this crap.
The last thing that needs to happen is they need what do they call it? The box. I don't think we need a home plate umpire is what I'm trying to say. I just don't think you need a guy calling balls and strikes. I think they're getting actually better because they see that the box is there, and when they see a ball go into what they think is a box, because that's what we see on TV all the time, I think they're calling strikes more often. I think it's made them better umpires knowing that we have the box there available. I just don't know that there's room for. So, I mean, it's like when you kick a field goal, it goes through the uprights. It's good. When a ball goes through the box, and it hits the box and it's a strike, that's a strike. It's not subjective. It's not something that should be subjective. It's either a ball or a strike.
And I completely agree with you. And case in point was the first 2 innings of today's game. And this is one thing that home plate umpires have done for years. They probably will continue to do it for years, and it drives me insane. The exact same pitch, exact same location on a 0-2 count is called a ball, but on a 3-0 count is called a strike.
Yeah.
And they do it because of the count, because of the situation.
Or they do it based on who the hitter or the pitcher might be.
And that could be too.
If it's an experienced, well-respected pitcher, you get the strike. If it's an experienced, well-respected hitter, sometimes you don't get the strike.
Well, and then the flip side is what's the relationship with the coach and the umpires? Or maybe a player that's, said something in a game earlier in the season.
Oh, sure.
All of that stuff.
That
completely
happens in
agree.
every sport.
Yeah.
That happens in every sport. I mean, LeBron, Michael Jordan, I thought, got more calls because he's Michael Jordan. But he also earned those calls to a certain extent. I mean, and he was fouled a lot more, especially in the 80s, because everybody was getting hacked.
Then you can make the argument, well, did Max Anderson and Bryce Matthews this year for Nebraska earn some calls? Earn some strikes that were called balls?
Probably.
I mean, you can use that same logic.
Sometimes you play on a bad team. It doesn't matter how good you are individually. But not that Nebraska was bad. They had a winning record. They just didn't win enough. Anyway, I do want to talk a little bit about Nebraska baseball if we have time a little bit later on. You mentioned it in the starting gate, the Rob Childress effect. I mean, because they've picked up 5 commits in the last week.
Yeah.
And it's mostly been because of Rob Childress. So I do want to hit on that a little bit, but I want to make sure we have plenty of time for Jalen Reyes. And we'll talk to him. It's pre-recorded, but you'll love it. And we'll do it next. He's Mike Melby. I'm Tom Stevens. It's Husker Rewind.
This is Brian at Midwest Bank, and we've been proudly serving clients in the Lincoln community since 2008, and we're excited to open a second location in January 2024 at 70th and Pioneers Boulevard. Our new branch will provide all the convenient services you're looking for in a bank, along with the friendly staff we're known for. Whether you're starting a business or expanding your business, Our team is here for you, your community, your bank, Midwest Bank. Find out more at midwestbank.com, member FDIC.
It's the best time of the year to order a new John Deere planter from Landmark Implement during the early order program. Plant for success with the industry's latest technology. Upgrade to an Exact Emerge high-speed planter to cover more acres, increasing flexibility and productivity. Now is the time to lock in the best price of the year. Contact your local Landmark location to order your new John Deere planter and experience the Landmark difference.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 a.m, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it twice a day.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it in the morning and before dinner.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it, and share it with my doctor. Nearly 1 in 2 U.S. adults have high blood pressure. That's why it's important to self-monitor your blood pressure in 4 easy-to-remember steps. It starts with a monitor.
Now that I know my blood pressure numbers, I talked with my doctor. We're getting those numbers down.
Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it. Talk to doctor now and share it.
Be next to talk to your doctor about your blood pressure numbers. Get down with your blood pressure. Self-monitoring is power. Learn more at manageyourbp.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the American Heart Association, and the American Medical Association, in partnership with the Office of Minority Health and Health Resources and Services Administration.
Welcome back, Husker Rewind. Tom Stevens and Mike Melby every Sunday from 5 until 7. Time to welcome in Nebraska assistant volleyball coach Jalen Reyes. Hey, Jalen, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Good. It sounds like you got stuff going on in the background there. Where are you?
I'm in a volleyball gym in Easton, Texas. Kind of here for a clinic. Actually doing one with Lindsey Krause later this evening, and kind of watching some younger teams play volleyball. Recruiting never stops.
So it's not good enough that you just hauled in some of the best recruits in the country. You're looking for more.
Always looking for more, and just like any sport, I know it's going on in football right now, but recruiting never ends. So it's we got a couple of commits, but just on to the next.
Talk about how good you're obviously a great recruiter. Do you think that you have to be somebody who loves recruiting to be great at it?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think I tell the people this, we've had some success, and I guess since I've become the recruiting coordinator, we've had some success, but a lot of it has to do with I'm selling, in my opinion, the best product. So, this volleyball program in Nebraska there's a lot of people that just want to line up and want to play for it. So I think, Coach always says the biggest recruiting tool we have is if we just keep winning. That kind of makes everything better if you just keep winning, so I don't know if it's, if you have to love it, but I think the great ones enjoy getting to know people, building relationships, getting out there and putting your name, your school out there. I personally do love it, and I love spending the time doing it. I've spent a lot of time, especially recently in the last 10 days, out on the road recruiting, and I love every minute of it. But, to answer your question, I would say, I would say that it helps if you love it. If you don't love it, you don't want to spend all the extra time and stuff like that. And I feel like a lot of recruiting is just relationship based, and, someone that's really good with people, I think that really helps.
Nebraska recruiting coordinator and assistant volleyball coach Jalen Reyes joining us here on Husker Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket. You have 3 2025 commits in the 2025 class, or for the 2025 class already. Campbell Flynn, Kerry Leimbach, Terea Sigler. Do you think there are going to be more, or do you pretty much have everything filled right now for that 2025 class?
I think we're hoping for one or two more. Couple blue chip kids around the country, but I would say 1 or 2 more. In a perfect world for Nebraska volleyball.
But now you have to consider not only, I'm sure NIL comes into play with volleyball. I know it does, but also the portal. How much do you consider that when taking freshmen versus, hey, we also need some experience?
That's a great point. You can't teach experience, right? Especially if you played at some bigger program going into the tournament. I think we all factor that in for sure. Just everything's so unpredictable, right? So you don't know what's going to pop into the portal eventually. We don't know how maybe a high school kid is going to turn out, if I'm being honest. But that's something we definitely account for. We're a team that we'd rather, I guess, grow, kind of start at the grassroots with high school kids and club kids, and then use the portal maybe to fix a hole we have versus not necessarily, I guess, living and thriving off the portal, if that makes sense. I think the portal can be great, but I think if you're living off of it, it's kind of unpredictable a little bit. And I don't know, I'm one who's not the best eater, but I would say the portal is like fast food.
Right.
Sometimes it's awesome, but I don't know if you want to make a healthy diet of eating it every single day,
right.
Versus we feel like recruiting high school kids and kind of, starting with kids in Nebraska and starting with kids in the nearby area, we feel like that's the best way. And then if we have a hole or a need, then maybe we can use the portal if we find somebody who can help us.
Jalen, we've called you a great recruiter. And Mike Krzyzewski used to say, I don't necessarily recruit, I kind of select. And you mentioned Nebraska and how it recruits itself a little bit. Has that been one of those things that you've noticed that Nebraska kind of, they draw attention and then you have to kind of pick and choose who you want based on the great players in the country?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. I mean, the one thing for sure is everyone takes our phone call when we're allowed to call them, so June 15th, all the kids that we wanted to talk to, they all responded, and we were able to pretty much reach out to all of them, which is awesome. I know that's not always the case with other programs. So that's already a good start. And then in terms of the selection process, I don't know. I try to, as a recruiting coordinator, I try to don't assume these kids are just going to pick Nebraska because it's Nebraska. We're going to recruit them just as hard as if we feel like, hey, maybe we're not the favorite for this kid. And, since I've been at Nebraska, and I think even John before me, we try to recruit kids as hard as we can, never assuming anything is a done deal. And, I think that's the best way to go about it. And when we've done that, we've had some recent success. And I think that's part of the reason why I spend a lot of time on the road and trying to build some relationship with club coaches and high school coaches and, try to see these kids as much as I can. And, obviously there's certain rules, what we can do, but, if I was a high school kid and I always saw a Nebraska coach on my court, I'm going to kind of feel like, hey, Nebraska is making me a huge priority. And whether that kid's from California or they're from Nebraska or they're from Texas or Florida, that's kind of the way we want to go about it. And we feel like we've had some success doing that.
Nebraska volleyball assistant coach Jalen Reyes joining us here on Husker Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket. Jalen, as well as I'm going to compound and step on a couple of questions.
The weather is hot.
About.
The kids are out of
you
school.
Guys kind of get
you're on your way to the lake and summer road
and you get to choose from whoever. But there's times that I know you've got talent that is closer, that you've got a connection to, that you simply don't have room for. But to what you just said about that recruiting process and how hard you recruit the kids, how much respect you give them, with the transfer portal being there, who knows what's going to happen? I know there's a local young lady that's going to go to a different school that's kind of the case. The numbers just didn't work out. But how difficult is it to weigh all of those things when you're making the decisions on who are you going to go after?
Yeah, I think that's a huge point. Obviously, you kind of hit on it. I'm not allowed to obviously mention names, but we've had that decision within the last week or so. And, I think recruiting also is not just a year thing, right? It's when you're making a decision for this year, it also affects other years. So when we take a kid last year, maybe in a certain position, it might push out somebody in this year at that same position, and that's something that we try to account for and try to balance. And, we want to make sure, hey, maybe as a player in one position is leaving, we got a good one coming in, and not have a million of one position in one class, and then suddenly we got to go recruit that class again. We like to try to even it out. That's what we try to do in these last couple of years. And sometimes great players or really good players, we just don't have room for, or we don't really have a spot for. And, it's tough sometimes. And I think that's the conversations we've had, or, we've had times in the past where kids suddenly have gotten like really, really good out of nowhere, and we decide to take them. And, maybe we are a little unbalanced in a position or two. So these are all things you kind of take into account, but we try to feel like, okay, hey, if we have a plan for somebody, or we can see this player really helping our volleyball program, we're going to try to recruit them as best as we can. But I think what you said is tough, because you kind of want to always try to collect the really good players around you. But part of me is we don't want to just collect them to collect them and have them on the team. We want to make sure there's a healthy balance of what we're doing, and making sure we don't get out of balance in terms of, there's only a certain amount of scholarship, there's only a certain amount of money available. We don't want to, I guess, put it all in maybe one position, and then suddenly our team is a little unbalanced in terms of, having too many middles or too many setters or liberos on it, if that makes sense. So I think what you said is there's a fine line, because to a degree, we feel like we can get a lot of good players, and the thing that comes with us is, we have to tell a lot of good players, thank you, but no thank you too, which is a really hard conversation to have sometimes.
Nebraska volleyball assistant Jalen Reyes is our guest. You're going to play a match at Memorial Stadium this year in front of 91,000 plus against Omaha. If I would have told you that when you started with this staff, would you have believed it?
I would say no, because that just sounds insane when you really just think about it. But at the same time, part of the reason that got me to come to Nebraska was Coach talked about doing things here that's never been done before. So sure, maybe the stadium match in front of 91,000 wasn't maybe talked about when I interviewed for this job back in the day, but Coach's mantra is keep dreaming big, and ever since I've gotten here, we try to do that. And, obviously this is, in my opinion, this is more than a volleyball game. I know that sounds kind of bad, because at the end of the day, it should be about the volleyball game, but this is going to be something that, I don't know, volleyball fans, I think, from all over are going to be like, where was I on this when this happened? And I know a lot of people from all around the country, even all around the world, want to come to this and be a part of this, because it's going to be something that I don't think we'll ever see again, and yeah, I guess to a degree, I wouldn't have believed you, but at the same time, I'm like, well, if someone was going to do this, it's John Cook and Nebraska volleyball. So.
Coach Jalen Reyes from the Nebraska volleyball program joining us. Coach, I want to ask you about 67 different types of questions about this subject, but I'm just going to make it really simple and easy and very broad. How was Brazil?
I mean, I don't think we could have gotten. I mean, if someone asks me, like, what's your least favorite part of the trip, I have to, like, nitpick and pick something and almost make something up. The weather was perfect. Food was awesome. People were unbelievable. The volleyball was great. It was a little competition was a little light early, but once we got to Rio and Saquarema at the National Team Training Center, competition was awesome, as we basically played a bunch of their national teams at different ages. I mean, it was nothing bad happened in terms of, some things that could happen in foreign countries, nothing like that. And travel was smooth besides a long layover in Sao Paulo. Everything was great. So I have no complaints about Brazil, and I don't think the girls would either.
Well, there's so many names that we know on this team, the Becca Alex of the world, the Allie Batenhorst, but there's a lot of new faces on this team. Merritt Beeson, how did she become a captain?
Merritt is, she's very, very, I guess, welcoming. She's come in and, like, worked really hard and really tried to, like, I guess, ingratiate herself with her teammates. And, I mean, when things go wrong or when some of the players need someone to talk to, it seems like they always talk to Merritt. And, that's huge in terms of who you want to pick a captain. You're going to pick somebody that that the team's going to go to. and they kind of naturally gravitate toward her. Obviously, her being a great player and experienced player. I know she's new with us at Nebraska, but she's been through battles deep into the tournament with Florida at a school with similar expectations than us. So she understands, kind of coming in and like, this is the deal. And she's played big in big matches. And ever since she's gotten here, she's acted like a captain. And, without even us telling her, like she's kind of done a lot of things that we'd want, one of our captains to do. And I think it was pretty unanimous in terms of, her being voted as a captain among staff and her teammates.
Coach Jalen Reyes from the Nebraska volleyball program joining us here on 93.7 The Ticket on Husker Rewind. About a month ago, there was an announcement made that a young lady was going to come back and coach, since now we have 3 available assistant coaching positions. Her name just happens to be Jordan Larson. She's one of the most decorated and celebrated volleyball players in the history of U.S. volleyball. She's now a coach, though. A couple of questions. What have you learned from her in the short time you've been able to work with her? And what type of questions is she asking you and Coach Cook about how to coach, and what can she do better, et cetera? How can she, be a part of the staff to make sure that she continues the consistency and the chemistry that you guys have?
For sure. Questions I have her. I have a lot of questions. We haven't gotten to work together too much, just because she was here for a couple of days of Brazil training, and then she went out to California with the national team, and then we left. So questions I'd have for her is honestly just, she's one of the best ever in terms of a volleyball player in her position as an outside hitter. So just training and, and stuff that she's working on passing. She's one of the best serve receive players, ever, honestly, to ever play. So I would have questions about that. I have questions about how we're going to train our left side attackers, because she's obviously very qualified and knows a little about that. And I think the other question is just like, how do you, she's, I'm not going to say her age, but she's up there in terms of, she's been playing for a long time. And I think
wise man,
just like how she's really, really, how have you maintained this level of excellence? And maybe that's not just for me, and I can apply it to myself, but even for the girls, and how do you maintain this level of excellence over this long period of time? And I think that's kind of, I guess, for the goal for all of us. And then questions she's asking me, again, we haven't worked together too much. She's kind of asking a lot of stuff like we've trained. I know she's played for John, but she hasn't played for a while now here in Nebraska. So it's like, what are we training and what are we trying to do? And, maybe some certain things we're doing in the middle, and then certain things recruiting wise, especially recently. That's kind of probably our most recent question, kind of recruiting wise, kind of our philosophy and what we're trying to do and how we want to communicate with people and stuff like that. And just kind of, I guess, also catching her up on certain things that she's just joined us. So kind of catching her up to speed on a lot of things that, maybe have kind of been taking place. But, in terms of Jordan, I think she's going to be, if I had to pick a Mount Rushmore, especially USA volleyball player, she's clearly on it now. She wasn't already before this last Olympics. She's clearly on it now, and she's probably, face number 1, maybe number 2, So I'm just happy I get to work with somebody that's, I get to work for John Cook, who's going to be who's a Hall of Famer already, and I get to work now with Jordan Larson, who, one day will still be in the Hall of Fame for sure.
That's crazy when you think about it. You get to work for John Cook, who's like the John Wooden of volleyball, and you're going to work with Jordan Larson, who's the Michael Jordan, LeBron James as a player in volleyball. Describe what it's like when other players or recruits meet her.
They're all shocked. I mean, I think using LeBron James or using, Tom Brady or using somebody where it's like the greatest of all time in your sport, especially if you're an American, it's kind of, especially nowadays, right, where all these little girls just watched her win the Olympics. Even our girls, watching them react to seeing Jordan for the first time is kind of, we talk about her all the time. We watch video on her. We talk about the stuff that she does. But now it's like, this person's now your coach, or this person's recruiting you, or this person's on the recruiting call with you. And it's funny watching some of their reactions to it, just because, you get to meet. It's not every day. I'm assuming a lot of these girls, like Jordan's a role model for her. Harper Murray, Harper Murray. That's Harper Murray's idol. Harper Murray knew she wanted to come to Nebraska back in the day when she was an 8th grader, and Coach Cook told her that she reminded me of Jordan Larson. So it's crazy now. It's like they're being coached by Jordan, and getting to see their reaction to, hey, like getting to see their reaction to like Jordan's around and she's going to be with us. And I don't know, it's invaluable. You can't, it's, she says a lot, and there's a lot of impact with her just being here, and, I'm excited to work with her as well as I'm excited to work, with Kelly and, and obviously work for John.
I know we used to have you on all the time to give your NBA takes. How much did you watch of the NBA finals, and how big of a fan of Nikola Jokic have you become?
I mean, first, it was actually really nice to watch the NBA finals because most of it happened while we were in Brazil. So it was like super late. So like anything that we had volleyball late, we'd come back to the hotel at 10 o'clock and it'd just be, into the first quarter because it was so late in Brazil, which was really nice. I watched a good amount of basketball. I love basketball in the postseason, especially. I'm a Laker fan. I don't know if you remember that. So Lakers actually had a really nice year.
Yes, they did.
Being like 2-15 to making it to this, to the conference semifinals and stuff like that. I think that's a really good year for them. And, hopefully we can get to put some pieces around LeBron and stuff like that over the offseason. And then, Nikola Jokic is crazy. It's like, I saw something where it's like the man can't even jump on a parking curb, but at the end of the day, he's still going to give you 45, 16, and 8, and he doesn't even need to leave the ground to do it, which is crazy. And he's just the guy to a degree, just like LeBron, where it's like the best part of his game is he makes everybody around him better. He can go get 50, but he can go get somebody else 25 who has no business scoring 25 in the NBA, and it's, I don't know, it's cool to watch, like, I don't know, the evolution of basketball where it goes from wings to a lot of, this year, a lot of the best players were, two centers were kind of the best players, I guess, all year. So it's cool how sports evolves. And obviously, Embiid and Jokic aren't traditional just centers. They're center point guards almost, so it's cool to watch that sport evolve just like I would say our sport of volleyball is evolving.
Well, you watch a lot of basketball because you recruit a lot of girls that play both basketball and volleyball as well. And you can hoop it.
True.
You can hoop it a little bit, right? How's your jumper?
My J is okay. Maggie Mendelson will tell you otherwise. If you ever have her on there, I'm sure she'll climb my jumper, but it's okay. It's okay. And then when someone's hand goes in my face, and it just goes all whack. So let's just say I've spent more time volleyball passing and spiking volleyballs, especially in the last 10 years, than I have shooting jump shots.
Well, that's good. That's good for Nebraska volleyball. It actually be bad if your jumper was great. So
exactly,
I'd be a little worried.
Exactly.
It's like the guy that plays too much golf and is the football coach.
That is a start. That is honestly, that's starting to be a problem for me. And I don't know if it's considered a problem, but I'm honestly starting to play a good amount of golf on these recruiting trips, which is really nice.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, you're from Hawaii, for crying out loud. You're allowed to play a little golf here and there.
That's true. That
right.
is true. Next time you have my boss on, maybe slide that one in there at the end. Okay.
He's been known to play a little golf as well.
He's pretty good. He is pretty good.
He's a good golfer. He's a great athlete, just like you are. Jalen, we'd love to have you back this summer. When things get slow, we can call you and talk a little volleyball.
For sure. Thanks, guys, for having me.
You're the best. Thanks Jalen.
Bye-bye. Thanks, fellas. Have a good weekend.
There he goes. Jalen Reyes, a Nebraska assistant volleyball coach and one of the best recruiters in the entire country.
Yeah.
Sure.
And one of the most just fun and enjoyable guys to sit there and have a conversation with.
You can see why he's a great recruiter. He's pretty good at building relationships. He's certainly built many of them with the ticket staff. We've had him on many, many times. I think he's coming back this summer as well. So when it gets a little slow this summer, we'll have a little Jalen time.
I thought it'd be a little slow right now. And it's like, where are you at? I'm in a gym in Houston watching volleyball.
That's right.
Gonna find the next All-American.
Well, you don't become the best recruiter in the country by accident. I mean, you got to work at it.
I thought his answer to the question of, are you done recruiting for the 2025 class? And he's like, no, I think we got 2 more blue chips. And you're just like, that was pretty matter of fact. Yeah. I like that. That's a little confidence.
Merritt Beeson might be their best player this year, though, and she's the transfer from Florida. I mean, I think they need. They obviously need the number one recruiting classes. That helps you win national titles, but also the Merritt Beesons that, come in, fill a void, as he mentioned. You need that mix because Nebraska is really young, but they're older at spots as well. So I think it's going to be a good mix. To me, though, Nebraska volleyball is going to be as good as the setting. They need to figure out the setting position.
Yeah.
If they find the right setter.
Bergen Riley was the number one setter last year, and Kennedy Orr was the number one setter the year before. And, at the end of the day, Lindsey Hunter was one of the best. She's the only setter in Nebraska volleyball history that was able to win 2 national titles as literally the quarterback of the team. One of those two is going to wind up – I think one of those two is going to wind up being an All-American. It just depends on which one is going to step up this year and be that.
And the nice thing about both those girls is they're fairly tall, so they're pretty good blockers as well. I think when I heard Cook talk about it at last, he said they're really even. They're really close right now. It'll be interesting to follow that and see who wins the setting position. And maybe it'll be a battle that goes into the season. You never know. Let's get to break, come back with our final segment, talk a little Husker baseball.
Yeah.
Because I do want to talk about all these commits that have been coming in over the last week or so. It's really been a nice little run for Nebraska baseball. We'll talk about it. Mike Melby, Tom Stevens here. It's Husker Rewind. One more segment on the way.
General contractors, business owners, property owners. The success of your business requires doing business with the right people. And the right people, when it comes to drywall, acoustical ceilings, and specialty products, are at Premier Drywall. Kevin and his crew will give your project the response and attention it deserves.
You'll get all of the attention to detail and quality that you would expect from someone who's been in the business for 30 years. For your new builds, build-outs, or renovations, reach out to Kevin at premierdw.com. Premier Drywall in Lincoln.
Plains Cover Crop is your one-stop seed shop. Call us now for spring and summer forages, CRP mixes, and fall cover crop blends. We do farm-specific consulting for practical and efficient seed blends to fit your geography and goals. With a very diverse inventory, we will tailor a blend just for you. We're also looking for contract growers, and we buy and sell rye. Find us online at plainscovercrop.com. Timeless agronomy practices paired with modern technology. East Highway 20 in Orchard and across Nebraska.
Hi, Sean Callahan here of HuskerOnline.com, inviting you to join us here on 93.7 The Ticket every Saturday morning. Now in our new time, we're on from 8 to 9 with the weekly Husker Online radio show. We'll give you the latest in recruiting. We'll talk about what's going on with both football, basketball, and we'll probably share a few stories from the inside. It's every Saturday morning right here on 93.7 The Ticket. It's the Husker Online radio show from 8 to 9 a.m.
As an 18-year-old, I let my mistakes kind of take over my life. I was 0.5 credits away from completing high school, and I didn't do it.
10 years later, at age 28, Jackie finished her high school diploma.
When I found out that I was pregnant, I know that I had to do something for myself if I wanted to make her a better person and provide a better life for her. My family never stopped pushing for me to be better because they knew what I could become and who I could become as a person. My support team is amazing. The educational director, my sister, and even my 7-year-old daughter has just been more than the support that I could ask for. I've been given an opportunity, and I'm just thankful for it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to 93.7 The Ticket, theticketfm.com. This is Husker Rewind. My name is Mike Melby. That is Tom Stevens.
Hello.
And we are into our last segment. And then after us follows, let's see.
Something about finish and
oh, yeah,
line.
The finish line. That's
There's
right.
a line and yeah, it's a racing show that's on 93.7 The Ticket every Sunday at 7.
Yeah. Myself, Rebecca Pearson, take you through all kinds of stuff. We talk motorsports, period. We don't really care what it is. And as a matter of fact, I think one thing we may talk about a little bit later in the year is even some RC car racing. Because some of the guys that are local racers actually have little RC cars and they go to a local establishment where they have a track and they race there.
And you have one, right?
Yeah, I jumped into the fray last year. It's kind of fun. But
is it hard? Is it hard to get really good at that?
Oh, the RC stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I suck. It's not easy at all.
Yeah.
It's so tough to control. I have a little mini sprint car. The wheelbase on that thing is only like 6 inches. So it's really tough to steer. It reacts so quickly. tough to control. It's really easy to have spectacular crashes, though.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the best part is it doesn't cost you like thousands of dollars when you wreck your sprint car because you just flip the bad boy back
Can
on
people
its
go
wheels.
and watch you guys?
Oh, yeah.
Where do you race?
Yeah, down to Hobbytown.
Oh, down to Hobbytown.
Yeah, we'll have to talk to him about coming
down
on.
to Hobbytown. Sounds like a song.
Yeah. And then today we've got 2014 Nebraska touring 360 touring series sprint car champion and 2019 Eagle Raceway 305 sprint car champion Trevor Grossenbacher will be on the show tonight. So should be fun.
Was it last week or the week before? But a couple of weeks ago, we announced that Rob Childress was joining the Husker coaching staff.
I think it was 2 weeks ago.
It was 2 weeks ago. It didn't take him long to have an effect on this recruiting class. Nebraska picks up a commit this week from Tyner Horn, who had decommitted from Wichita State. They've lost almost their entire recruiting class after firing their coach. He's from Halstead, Kansas. He's a 2023 recruit. He had offers from Kansas State, Kansas, Missouri, and Indiana with some interest from some SEC schools. He hits 96 on the gun. And he said one of the reasons he chose Nebraska was Rob Childress. Apparently, Rob signed like 30 baseballs for his fourth grade or 4-year-old. It's like a 4-year-old. And his birthday party, he lived at that time. His family lived in College Station, Texas. And Rob, of course, was the head coach at Texas A&M. The family was close to Texas A&M baseball. He made a connection to a 4-year-old. Never stop recruiting 4-year-olds. That's the key to a good recruiting class.
I think so.
Because it paid off for Nebraska baseball and getting Tyner Horn. And they believe he could be a Friday night guy. And when you look at his numbers, you understand why. He has no numbers. I mean, literally, he went 38 and a third innings, 65 strikeouts, and a 0.00 ERA. Only 12 hits allowed. I don't know how many guys in the country have a 0.00 ERA.
Well, I do because I don't play. So,
well, there you go. That's the key. Just don't play.
You could be really good.
And you could be really good. He throws a 96-mile-an-hour fastball. He's also got a curve, a change, a slider, and a cutter. So he's got something to his arsenal. They also picked up Brooks Neifel, who's, as a senior, has a 1.92 ERA, 83 strikeouts, 19 walks, from Wayne, Nebraska, 6'2", 220. They got a kid named Tyler Stone in the 2024 class. He's a first baseman from Iowa Western, who hit 360 with 66 RBIs, 15 homers. And a nice transfer from St. Mary. St. Mary's is Division II. His name is Clay Bradford. Hit 419, 14 hits, or 14 home runs, I should say, 54 RBIs. They've done some work. I wonder if it'll be one of those things like they get to fall camp and they just have a cut again. Yeah, I think it might be that way every year. They had like 45 players. They had to trim the roster to what, 38?
38 or 39, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in there. And they did it. And I don't mind that. I mean, there's a lot of good baseball players because of COVID. There were so many JUCO players that got overlooked and high school players that got overlooked. And I think that's still happening a little bit because now everybody's hitting the portal hard and guys get overlooked and they have to go to JUCO and get rediscovered because they were passed over as a high school kid.
Yeah, I don't think it's a really good recipe for success to oversign every year to where you got to cut guys. I think it becomes kind of disingenuous to recruit guys when you know you don't have room for them. Last year was kind of a different setup.
If you tell them
with
going
the way
in, I don't have
were.
if you tell them
I get
maybe
that.
going in, I don't necessarily have a big problem.
Yeah, yeah, but still, I'm not a big fan of purposely oversigning, old school SEC days. And then, oh, sorry, you didn't make it. That's not what was done last year in any way, shape, or form, or stretch of the imagination. There was some, they knew there were going to be some guys that were moving on and all of that. And the nice thing is Will Bolton, the staff, worked with every one of the players that did not wind up playing for Nebraska this past year to find them a home to play, and then hopefully be able to come back and help the Huskers in the future for some of them. But it's been kind of interesting since the other thing, not only is it the Rob Childress effect, it's the Mike Sirianni effect, because Tyner Horn isn't at Nebraska, I don't feel. Well, it's tough to say if it wasn't for Sirianni, because I know Sirianni was at Wichita State, but that connection when you're a 4-year-old man and you get somebody that has that kind of an impact on you. There's a local race sprint car driver that had that effect on me when I was 10 years old, and followed his career throughout. So maybe it would have been with Tyner Horn that he would have come here because of Rob Childress, but don't think Mike Sirianni is not going to be a huge addition to that staff. He is one of the best recruiters in college baseball.
But it seems like a nice mix. I remember the coaching staff, and it was Lance Harvell, I think, told us a couple of times that maybe they didn't get the mix right a couple of years ago when they've really struggled, and maybe they thought their maturity on this year's team was a lot better. You got 11 freshmen in this class, but also 10 transfers, either JUCO or D1 transfers. So hopefully you get a nice mix of young and old involved in that recruiting class. One final thing on the show tonight that I wanted to hit on before we leave. And I think it's interesting that Ted Carter has taken over. He's taken charge basically over the athletic department as far as the oversight of big picture stuff, the planning of the athletic department. They're talking about a $400 million renovation of Memorial Stadium. They're talking about, paying coaches $11 million. We're talking about big budget stuff. And Nebraska, let's face it, they've paid more money in buyouts of coaches for football and basketball than any other school in college football over the last 20 years. They've made a lot of mistakes as far as the budget is concerned. And now we're heading into a Big Ten era where you still need to sign a TV contract. You're talking about annual revenues of $117 million. It's more than Kearney's whole budget, Nebraska Kearney's whole budget. It's a crazy big budget that you're dealing with. And I'm not sure that Trev Alberts has the time to deal with all that crap, especially in the day and age of NIL and the transfer portal. I think maybe it's a good idea with Ted Carter and his resume, especially, dealing with the NCAA, being on the board of governors when he was at Navy. He has the background. He has the experience. The backlash that I'm hearing is that Ted Carter's not going to be around here forever.
Well, that's what I'm going to say. I don't like the decision personally, but
I've heard that. And I think a lot of it has to, but did you like all the decisions that Harvey Perlman made over the years when he, as chancellor, made a lot of bad decisions?
No, I agree. You need people in positions to do their jobs correctly. And, that it's Trev's job now to, fix what Bill Moose messed up, who was trying to fix what Sean Eichhorst messed up, et cetera, et cetera. And
why don't you like the decision?
A lot of it is because Ted Carter's not going to be here for the next 50 years, but
neither is Trev.
Well, I get it. But at the same time,
and hopefully you hire somebody after that makes good decisions. I mean, Nebraska football has been good when Bob Devaney was the athletic director, right? And that's about it. And Bill Byrne and Bob Devaney have been the two great athletic directors of our lifetime. And most of the people listening right now don't remember them because they're not as old as we are.
But the funny thing is, as an athletic director, Bob Devaney had the athletic department financially in not a good place.
No.
And so I get it.
Bill Byrne did
success on the field and on the court, but from a financial standpoint, Bill Byrne, the reason why Nebraska's athletic department is as successful and doesn't take a penny from state tax dollars, et cetera, and they're self-sufficient, is because of Bill Byrne and what he did.
And people hated him. They called him Dollar Bill.
Yeah, guess what? Dollar Bill made you be able to easily navigate COVID.
No.
So,
do you have any get off my lawns this week? Are you angry about anything?
Yeah, my lower back. I don't know what the hell I did to piss it off, but man, it attacked me on Wednesday. I was not thrilled with that. So,
well, your back can get off your lawn.
Exactly.
Get off my lawn. I don't have any. I'm feeling good. I just got back from Orlando. I feel like $100. I don't know if we'll do a show next week, Mike, or not.
Yeah, we'll figure it out here in a couple of minutes.
We'll figure it out in a couple of minutes.
We'll tweet about it. So make sure you follow both of us on Twitter.
That's right. But we had a fun show today. Thanks to Jalen Reyes and Brian Munson. And you're not leaving. You're staying.
Yep.
The finish line is coming up next.
Absolutely.
I'll see you maybe next week or maybe not.
Know.
All right. Bye-bye.
See ya.
The weather is hot, the kids are out of school, and you're on your way to the lake and summer road trips. Are you getting your